Welcome to the FarmBits podcast, a product of Nebraska Extension Digital Agriculture. I'm Jackson Stansel.
And I'm Samantha Teeton.
And we come to you each week to discuss the trends, the realities, and the value of digital agriculture.
Through interviews and panels with experts, producers, and innovators from all sectors of digital technology, we hope that you step away from each episode with new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology.
Welcome back to the FarmBits podcast for the first episode in the Digitizing Farm Management series.
Before we get started on today's content, we'd like to remind you that the Nebraska Extension and the Nebraska On-Farm Research Network are offering several educational events for Nebraska producers during January and February.
If you'd like more information about event opportunities, please reach out to your local extension educator or check out the website for the Nebraska On-Farm Research Network listed in the podcast description. That is, if you are a Nebraska producer.
To kick off the Digitizing Farm Management series, we are welcoming Aaron Friedlein as our guest for this episode.
Aaron is the product manager for SMS software, amongst other roles, at AgLeader Technology.
AgLeader Technology is based out of Ames, Iowa, and offers a suite of technology solutions for growers from data management to data analysis to in-field machine data collection and interconnectivity.
As a farmer himself, Aaron has firsthand experience working with AgLeader's SMS, or Spatial Management System, software and understands the needs of farmers who are using this software.
Aaron has plenty to share about the opportunities enabled by digital farm data management software. So let's dive right in to our interview.
I guess we can probably go ahead and get started. So, Aaron, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what exactly your role is at AgLeader?
Sure. So my name is Aaron Friedlein. I am a product manager at AgLeader Technology, based out of Ames, Iowa. My primary role as a product manager is to take feature requests and customer feedback on tools that we currently have within our data management products, and try to integrate them into making our SMS Basic, SMS Advanced, and AgFiniti products, something that they can get more use out of to help in their farming operation or their crop consulting business or their retail outlets. So that's kind of my primary role. I work, with sales and marketing within AgLeader to help with internal training. We also work with our dedicated training group to make sure that they're knowledgeable on all the new tools and development that we create each release, so that they're assisting our customers and our dealers. And then on the other side, we work with our development groups within AgLeader that build the displays that are used in the tractors and the combines and sprayers. Try to make sure all the data that they're collecting out in the field is represented as best we can in the mapping side of things for better decisions. I grew up in a small farm community in Northeast Iowa, which is where I currently live now. I farm on the side when I'm not sitting behind a desk 8 hours a day, so I feel like we have a pretty kind of a grounded foundation of where people would find the most value in the information that they're collecting to make a better decision for next year. So
awesome.
Very nice.
Yeah, sounds like you're the guy who connects and puts everything together. So that's awesome.
I hope.
Can you tell us a little bit of the SMS or AgLeader software and why data management is so important, or how you're filling this need?
Sure. So throughout precision farming, there's always been the cool factor of being able to see the information on the combine as you go through the field, or being out in the planter or wherever it might be. But being able to manage all of that information that you've collected is really kind of what puts the numbers to what you're seeing, and how you can make a better decision and make a better investment for the next year. Using the resources that you have, if you've got different varieties that seem to do better from one year to the next, different fertilizer rates that you've used, using the ability to assign a value on how that's paying back your operation is really one of the primary objectives. We use a lot of different layers sometimes in making those decisions, and so just being able to organize those layers to help make those decisions is really kind of where SMS and AgFiniti really shine. So.
Can you explain those differences if someone's not familiar with the SMS, like what AgFiniti, SMS Advanced, and SMS Basic?
Sure. So this is actually our 20th anniversary, 20 years of having a desktop software solution. So SMS Basic is what we released back in the year 2000, the summer of 2000. SMS Advanced followed in about 2003 or 2004. And so those are our desktop products. They're kind of what you would install on your laptop, your PC, and would allow you to do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as doing analysis and reading files from different machinery systems. In 2013, 2014, we released AgFiniti, which was our cloud-based mapping system. And it does a lot of different things. It connects our displays to each other out in the field. It connects our displays to our cloud. And it connects to a tablet app for iPads called AgFiniti Mobile, which allows you to really take that information with you in the field where you may not always have connectivity to the internet, but you can still see a map of where you're standing out in the field. So, so our desktop software products have a little bit more flexibility and a little more purpose-built things that are inside it, somewhat simply just because it's been out there for 20 years. And our AgFiniti products up in the cloud are really based on kind of trying to connect different platforms together. We can connect to other clouds such as DR Operations Center and Climate to kind of pull in everybody's data that they're collecting, depending on where it came from. So so the cloud is kind of our adaptable, get it from anywhere and display it anywhere, whereas our desktop is kind of our nuts and bolts. We're gonna take what you have and do what we can with it. So
awesome.
Absolutely.
Would you care to expand a little bit more on the nuts and bolts? I mean, we've talked a little bit about the data management and just kind of how the things are stored, but could you talk a little bit more about the features of that desktop software?
Sure. So I've lost count, but we can process data from over 15 different companies. So
Wow.
Deere and Case and Kloss, and being able to process all that information in one spot is really one of the big features of our desktop, that we can take whatever data you might have on that farm and process it so it's in a cohesive environment. So it's easy to manage, and that's really one of the primary drivers that has made it popular amongst crop consultants and retail locations, where they don't know what the customer might have on their farm, but SMS is usually probably the one that's going to be able to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really one of the big features of SMS. So after you get all the data read from different displays, being able to go out and do soil testing and do prescriptions to help balance the field or improve the pH of a field, making line prescriptions, and being able to use the planter data that they've collected and saying, okay, this after harvest comes around, this variety seemed like it maybe fell short compared to some other options, and so maybe that variety isn't what you want to do for next year. So the real nuts and bolts within SMS are being able to bring in all those different files, try to quantify the profit loss, the payback for each of those layers and try to make a better decision for next year. So.
Mhm. And so you guys have changed over time a little bit from like the basic to now the AgFiniti and having these different options. How did you find what growers are prioritizing in a farm management software? Or like why did you make some of these? What's the priority to them?
Yeah, that's a delicate balance. We knew that there was basic tools that growers wanted, and not to be a pun, but there's the very base level of doing a query, selecting an area and saying what did this area yield, or what planting population did I have in this area. So being able to use some of the base functionality of SMS, such as queries, and we call them tooltips, but you hover over a spot, it'll tell you what that exact one spot yielded, or what you had for a planting population. And so those were obvious tools that we needed to have in SMS. I'm sorry, in AgFiniti. So using those tools, we're connecting into different clouds now as well. As I mentioned, we can connect into Climate and Deer Operations Center to be able to streamline the process. The one thing we were able to gain in AgFiniti that SMS still, it's kind of a manual process, is being able to automatically, I've got files in AgFiniti and voila, it just creates a map. And so there's no button clicks, so to speak, in AgFiniti to be able to read files once they're in the account. So so those are kind of some of the things. If we could streamline it to the point where a user it was just there, it just worked. Those were the big advantages within AgFiniti.
Yeah, that data just being there and something just working is something I've heard from farmers before. They like it when it just works. I mean, that's fundamentally what they want, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So what is typically the biggest hurdle that growers have when they first start to use SMS to, I guess, using it more frequently on their end?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends on what their goals are when they first, make that purchase. My perception has been, we don't come as a checkbox on an order form. When they're ordering a new piece of equipment, they kind of have to go and make that decision to purchase mapping software. And so they're already kind of in the mindset, I want to make an improvement to my operation. So it kind of depends on what their goals are. Sometimes the hurdle is just finding those clicks. I know it can do it. I just need to see it. I need to know where it's at. And so we've taken a lot of steps to try to make that information as transparent as possible. Our training department has done a really great job of providing in-person training. They have pivoted very well in 2020 to allow online trainings. And I've seen nothing but positive feedback from those customers that have been through those sessions. And YouTube has been a really good resource as well, where we have a lot of, the step-by-step, button clicks to getting through the process of making a prescription, or the process of importing soil test results, or something like that. So, those are some of the tools that we really rely on to be able to help our customers, kind of step through that process, and kind of get them over that hump. A lot of customers say, I thought I knew a lot about SMS before going to a training session, and then they come out and they're like, wow, I have a lot of things I want to try to do, next week. So, that's one of the things we hear, quite often as well, is I didn't know it could do so much. And so the hurdle is sometimes just knowing, I want to get to this point. I want to get to this stage. How do I get there? And so, our tech support does a great job too of helping out people, over the phone or via email, to getting those goals accomplished. So.
You mentioned about how nice it is sometimes when the map just appears or it's really, really easy to use, but there can also be that downside. So how do you balance like functionality, so allowing you to make adjustments change settings and things like that, but also making it really easy to use. How do you make that balance? Because I do think SMS does a really great job compared to other data management softwares.
Yeah, that's a delicate task. So generally, what we end up going through is we go through several iterations of new tools when we get them when we're in the development process. We have a really great developer that can advise, well, I don't think that's going to work. You probably should not. You probably shouldn't think of that. And then we have several good testers as well that really give good feedback on, yeah, that didn't make any sense to me at all. We need to change something there. And so getting some good feedback internally before it ever sees the light of day is usually our best option. There is a balance, and some things we just can't avoid being, it looks busy, it looks complicated, but as best we can, we try to steer that process into something that they can make sense of without a whole lot of reading the help text and that kind of stuff. So
at its very basic level, the software does allow people to kind of keep their information for their fields stored in a very organized manner. It's how we kind of use it in our research, and I've seen other growers who kind of use that to just keep their data organized. What do you think is the biggest benefit or savings from keeping farm data organized for our growers out there, or even crop consultants?
Yeah. So being able to keep data organized is paramount. I mean, if you're looking at yield data, for example, and you want to see how that yield, over that field over several different years has yielded, and what areas are traditionally not very well producing compared to other areas that are much better producing. Keeping all the years of information combined within field north 80 is a big step of that, and we have some tools that will automate that. So if you have somebody else in the cab and they named it something different for that year and didn't know it was already in the list, and there's you need to kind of combine things together. We have several automated tools that will look through and say, okay, well, this belongs here and this belongs there, and put things where they belong to make sense of it all. So
And also along the lines of keeping these things organized, another benefit is the being able to pull it, like you said, from different machinery or different monitors. So you can have stuff from your planter and your sprayer all in one spot as well. But we also think about it from different growers and all their different equipment. So how, is this a benefit that you see more from consultants or companies where they do have lots of growers, or do you find a lot of farmers find it useful as well? But then also, like, how do you keep up all these ever-changing models and monitors and keep up with all that?
Yeah. So it's kind of two different answers to that. So on keeping all the different growers straight, we introduced the concept of projects a long time ago in SMS Advanced, where a single project would contain all one grower's information. So Smith Farms would be its own project, and Johnson Farms down the road would be its own different project. And so that really helps, segregate his information. If a consultant has Smith coming in to look over his maps, he doesn't see that he's also consulting for 10 of his neighbors. And there is some data security items there that growers as well as consultants need to have. So within SMS, that's a big part of keeping data organized. The other aspect there of having all the different displays and file types that we support is a never-ending. That's job security. That's what that is. It's not uncommon for manufacturers to have at least one update to their log data every year. Sometimes they'll do it 2 or 3 times a year. And so we have a relationship with, company A, B, and C's product managers that, they provide us with the information or the tools that we need to be able to read their data. Sometimes it's a matter that sometimes the challenge is we've been given the tools, but we haven't been given a lot of sample data to help validate that we're reading the file correctly in the first place. And so sometimes that becomes more of the challenges. We can code it up. We just can't validate until we get some real sample data, that it's going to work and be displayed correctly and look the way that they're expecting it to look. So that's usually the other side of that coin.
Sure.
That's interesting.
So with the new AgFiniti capabilities, I guess just to dig in a little bit more there, do the AgFiniti offerings only really work for ag leader monitors in the field, or are they able to interface with other monitors from, say, Trimble or any of these other companies that put monitors in cabs?
Sure. So we, to date, we worked with Climate and John Deere Operations Center. Here, this in the past, what we've had users do is they can sync their accounts to those other platforms. They can bring it into SMS and process it, and then put it back up in the cloud. This coming spring release here in about February, we're going to be able to process that in the cloud, so they don't have to also have SMS Basic or SMS Advanced to be able to process that data from those two systems. SMS and AgFiniti work really well together in the fact that if you're using AgFiniti and SMS together, SMS can do a lot of the reading of different file types. You can do imagery imports, soil survey imports, all those kind of things, and then kick all that information up into the cloud for viewing. So, AgFiniti a lot of times is a good viewer and a good connector to different things. It can create prescriptions, and it can do that very well with some of the tools we've added in the last 2 years to that system. And so it does a really good job of connecting different things and being a really simple platform to be able to use for that users that I really just want to look at my information. I don't want to have to go through all the process of fixing it and cleaning it up, and I just want to see it. And so that's really where its strengths are, and going forward, it's got a lot more capability that we haven't tapped into yet.
So are you kind of exploring AgFiniti as a way of kind of sharing files between the cloud and some of those desktop softwares as well, and having that be a transfer mechanism?
Yes. So we can use, there are some tools to be able to do that, coming from SMS up to AgFiniti and then coming down to other installs of SMS. I would probably say there's better options of doing that with the use of backups in SMS and then restoring those to other PCs. So it might work. It might have some side effects, but being able to use backups would probably be the more recommended process for that.
Got you. So that was a good little aside there. But I guess another question I wanted to ask on the AgFiniti side is how has having that cloud platform and I guess, building some of these APIs out with John Deere Operations Center and Climate kind of helped you to, I guess, build out a workflow for processing those new monitor data types that are coming in from say like a John Deere combine that has active yield or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so having the ability to connect to their clouds, that was step one, just being able to get that handshake established and bring data back and forth. But being able to use, bring their file in and then process it within the cloud is going to be a big help for a lot of people that, I don't want to use SMS if I don't have to. And so we started with, like I said, Climate and John Deere Operations Center. We have some other ones on our list to do, like I said, job security. So we'll be kind of tackling those as we find time. As I mentioned, some of the other connectivity features of AgFiniti are within our own displays. So being able to connect and do remote support with a display or display cast, so you can see what's going on in the field even if you're not there, and card ace being able to have that grain cart centered on the guidance line when they're out in the field, unloading on the go. So there's a lot of moving parts within AgFiniti, and being able to connect to different needs of different growers is a never-ending job. So
Sure.
A couple of the growers we've talked to really like SMS Advanced or SMS Basic, the desktop version, because they knew that the data was there. No one else could see it. They could back it up on their own. What would you say about AgFiniti and the cloud-based systems about data privacy and security?
Yeah, so we have taken a very transparent stance that and it's in our terms of use when they sign up for an AgFiniti account. We do not do anything to sell their data. We do not do anything to mine through their data. The only person that has the ability to see their information is their account owners. If they want to share it with a consultant, they have the control to share it for a year or 2 years or forever. And if they choose at some point they don't want to work with that consultant, they can end the sharing relationship at that time. So we do not use any of their data against them. we do not use use that information to benefit in any way. We're providing a service for that grower to have his data available to him, if he's connected online or in the field. So
that's good.
Nice. Yeah. Yep. That's I think that's what a lot of the growers that we've talked to have loved about desktop-based softwares, is just kind of sticky with that data privacy, and I guess it's important to maintain in the cloud too.
Yeah, it is. And there's different takes on that. There's different, that you could conceive different benefits of sharing data. And we provide those tools. I mean, if they want to share it with, whomever comes down the line asking for permission, they can make that decision and make that choice for themselves. So.
Sure.
One question that we didn't have on here, but we should have asked, or still can, was, we talked a lot about the storing and the importing the file types, but we also know that there's a lot of analysis that you can do. Can you mention some of those analysis? You already mentioned the profit loss one, which I think is a really cool one that you guys have. So can you talk about those?
Yeah. So in AgFiniti, we have a comparison tool where you can easily, if you have planting data for a field, you have harvest data for a field, we can quickly create a yield by variety comparison results. So that's kind of one of those other tools that I mentioned earlier, that the query and the tooltip in AgFiniti. The other one that was a obvious answer that needed to be available to people was being able to identify yield by variety. What's the better? What variety is yielding better? Which ones do I need to retire for next year? And those tools, that same tool is one of the more popular tools in SMS Advanced as well. Being able to compare in SMS Advanced, you can kind of set that up to do any kind of comparison. So one layer to another, any kind. So it could be yield to planting rate, it could be yield to soil type, it could be yield to topography within a field. And so being able to customize the comparison tools within SMS Advanced are one of the bigger feature paybacks that growers will and consultants use. We also have a correlation tool where, let's say you're comparing yield to soil sampling. You can see how, is there a positive response as yield goes higher? Does soil organic matter also go higher? And is there a positive response in that respect? Is there a positive response when soil potassium goes higher, or P1? And so that's one of the things that people use that for as well. So is there a relationship between these two layers? So comparison, correlation. We can build zones within SMS Advanced where we just throw a couple layers at it, and we say, pick me a couple of good, based on these layers, what relationships does SMS see, and how many zones is that in? And so it gives you the ability to kind of let SMS almost make some suggestions for you, and if you like them, you can go with them. If you see a couple tweaks, you can modify the layer and get what you need. So that was one of the tools we worked on a lot here in the last year, was our zone management, or management zone tools. Some of the other the next two are probably the other ones that have been highly used within SMS, which multi-year averages. So if you have yield history for the field for 4 or 5 years, you can start making take the average layer take the yield layer from each year and average it over those 5, 6 years or whatever it might be, and really start picking out those areas of the field that are most often productive, highly productive, or lower productive, and kind of use that to help drive some management decisions as well. So multi-year averages, and then the equation tool, most often used for prescriptions. That allows you to take any layer that you've got and assign, a function of multiply by this or multiplied by this other, map layer, and give me a result. I mentioned the equations that we have in AgFiniti, where we have different recommendations from different universities. You can build those same recommendations within SMS Advanced and have those same functionality. We took all their information from their agronomy sites and built the equations within AgFiniti, but you can do the same thing in SMS Advanced. So those are some of the big items. Some of the other ones that we have that different users will find value in. We have an NDVI analysis tool where you can take an image that has red or green bands, and then also has a near infrared band. We can generate an NDVI layer for that field, so you can start seeing, areas of stress, especially later in the growing season. It kind of gives you a depiction of whether, what your yield map might imply. Once you start seeing, especially in corn, if you start seeing middle of August some stress showing up, that's probably where you're going to start seeing some lower yield. So there's tools such as that for processing imagery. We have a terrain analysis tool, which is, once you kind of wrap your head around it, it's actually a really interesting way to look at your fields. You can take an elevation map with good accuracy, like an RTK layer. You can also use LiDAR, aircraft based elevation, and you can create a field map that shows where is the areas that are going to have the most drainage intensity. Where is a gully going to form first when we get a heavy rain? And so those are some of the tools that you just kind of visualize the field a little differently. We've had people that have created planting prescriptions when they can see that this slope has it faces the south. We're going to increase population by 1,000 seeds an acre for corn. On the north side of the slope, we're going to decrease it by 1,000 because sunlight isn't quite as direct on that slope. So that's kind of a unique way of visualizing a field and being able to manage the data just a little bit differently. So, and like you mentioned, profit loss is one of those tools that has, especially in tougher economic times, I think is one of the better tools to be using. It's also good in good times to make sure you're maximizing as best you can when the times are good. So. We added some tools a little over a year ago where we brought some functionality into Basic. That used to be only an SMS Advanced feature. And so we brought that into SMS Basic, and so you can track expenses per field. To get the map, still needs to be SMS Advanced as far as where the field is more profitable versus not profitable. But being able to enter that and create reports is now an SMS Basic feature. So
nice.
Yeah. We're very excited to see this new management zone tool. So
So can you just kind of, as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about how hard some of these analyses would have been, 10 to 20 years ago, really before we had a lot of the computing power that we do today. Can you just kind of speak to and quantify just how amazing it really is that we're able to do this now with digital technology and computers and having data that's well organized?
Yeah, you bet. So I started farming in 2003. So shortly after I got out of college, I rented my farm and rented my first farm. And I've really grown up in the digital age. The first year we also got a yield monitor, and so being able to visualize a field and how it yields, and being able to say, okay, I can see why this is a problem. I can see why I know why that's not yielding well. That's not making any sense to me. Being able to pinpoint, saying, okay, we need to go out and do some scouting on that, in the springtime and summer and late fall. But being able to quantify what you see in the map, ground truth it and see what's going on, are things that really kind of take that management to the next level. And we, being able to take different layers of historical yield and merging them into one, validates, okay, well, this is just an anomaly year. This really wasn't typical of something that we normally would see. And moving on to the bigger fish that need to be addressed. But yeah, I see great benefit in being able to just have that information at your fingertips, to be able to say, oh, well, let's see, I know this field has yielded this way over several different years. Even in terms of marketing, I look at some of my yearly trends on some fields and I go, okay, I know that if I have a train wreck year, the worst this field has ever done is 135 bushel an acre. I know in a train wreck year, I'm probably going to be in that ballpark. So I better, from a management and a risk management standpoint, I can probably market 110 bushels an acre when I have good prices, and just make sure I've got some risk management taken care of on that aspect. And so, some of those things are where, the value of some of those historical layers, just a simple yield map, can really pay dividends for reducing risk and improving management for the next year. So
Sure. Yeah, it's really good. And I guess, listening to you talk about that aspect, as well as some of the analyses that SMS offers, I immediately start to think, especially when I think about kind of variety performance within a field and that variety analysis, how much on-farm research that this SMS platform has enabled. I mean, growers can probably now put in trials that they couldn't have before and get, good results from them.
Right. And that's, I mentioned that was one of the things I've kind of grown up with as a farmer, not just, listening to where dad wants the next wagon. But yeah, I on our farm, I've tried to put in trials in different fields to make sure I'm at least testing something different. And that's really something too, where sometimes you don't know what you want to try unless you have a accidental strip trial. And oh well, that I had it set for 30,000 seeds an acre instead of 33,000 seeds an acre, and it doesn't seem like it made much of a difference, except for I saved some money on some seed. And that was really one of the driving forces with our new field trial module that we released in the last year. Being able to take and do structured research for your farm or for your clients if you're a crop consultant, and for example, doing a planting rate prescription. If you want to really dive into what the optimum seed rate is for a certain variety, drop in 5 different rates from 28,000 up to 42,000, and you can. Most guys will stomach having 42,000 seeds an acre planted for a 300-foot strip, right? And just see what it does. And then on the back end, doing all the statistics work to be able to say, this is the bushels per acre that we got, and this is the selling price that we're going to assume for this year, the cost of the seed, where was the economic optimum seeding rate for that variety or for that field. And then doing that across all of your field, all of your operations, from fertilizing to planting to, different tillage or different planter settings. That's really where you can start maximizing some of that profit, where you're kind of honing in on what really makes that field yield like you want. And our consultants have used that tool for, across all of their clients. So they'll have that same seeding prescription from 28 to 42, and they'll throw it out on 20 different fields. And all the operator has to do is just plant the prescription that he created for him with those trials in it. Go out and harvest that field, and we get that information back on the back end, and we can kind of sort out how things worked for that grower. So it really makes a very powerful tool that just calculates all that information for you without having to go through the statistics, and most people don't like statistics. So
Right.
we did all that grunt work on the back end.
That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome to see how far we've been able to come and how useful data management software can be. Can you speak to the future of, SMS or the data management softwares? What do you perceive to be the greatest opportunity for growth for ag data management software over the next 5 years?
So I think from a data management, I think profit loss layers are going to start being more and more, the norm. I think that's going to really start being important. It's going to be important in tough farming economic years, and in good economic years. I mean, like I said earlier, those tough years, you really, that pencil has to be pretty sharp to make sure you're covering your bases. And in the good years, you really want to make sure you're maximizing as much as you can. And so, those tools will start being important. We have other development items that we're always working on. I struggle sometimes to stay in front of my developer to keep him busy. But we have a lot of things that we are kind of working on in the background to help with future projects and future opportunities that exist. And there's different things that happen outside of our world, like carbon credits and some of these things where we may not make the tools that actually secure that information or to process that information, but we make the tools where you can pull that data from. So we have some integrators that use our tools for that. So
very cool. So I guess one more question I wanted to get in before we kind of get to people who are interested in learning more and doing some advice. Where are we in terms of adoption right now for farm data management software? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am interested to kind of know, how many consultants out there are actually using this, how many companies are using this, and where are we with growers that are using it for their own farms?
Yeah, so I can't disclose any actual numbers.
Sure.
But I would say, when you look at our consultant base, there's a lot of consultants that use SMS Advanced for their needs. And that number doesn't seem to change, from one year to the next. We see, new consultants coming on, and returning customers, that keep using it from one year to the next. And the modules that we've got, I mentioned the field trial module. We also have a water management module for tiling and booklet printing and for small plot research. Those serve different communities, and those tools are very tailored to what that community does. And so there's new opportunities there all the time. On the grower side, I would say that we have a lot of growers that also use SMS Advanced. They're maybe more the tech savvy, maybe like me. They kind of grew up with it. They kind of had to, that was what they were around.
Sure.
And so, and the same way they use SMS Advanced, they use SMS Basic, they use AgFiniti. They use the tool that meets their base need the most. So as far as adoption, we've always had a very loyal following for our data management products with SMS Basic and SMS Advanced. And we haven't seen, there's still a great need out there, regardless of what online platform comes out. We still see a need for that layer, that information, and the tools to process, what they've got. And we're very proud of our customer base, and we do a lot to try to help keep them with the tools that they need, and try to help them as best we can. So
great.
That's awesome. So if someone's interested in learning more or trying out an SMS, either basic or advanced, where do you suggest that they go to learn more?
Sure. So we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, Instagram, and if they want to learn the actual process, what is this software going to do for me? I mentioned YouTube, and it's really interesting to be able to look at YouTube and be able to say, okay, this is what I think I'm going to get, and this is the process of getting there. Okay, that makes sense how to get there. And the great thing about YouTube is if they've purchased the software, or even if they've downloaded the 21-day free trial from our website, they can kind of click along and hit pause on YouTube, and then kind of catch up on their side, and kind of learn that new process, and see if that's giving them what they're looking for. So I've lost count on how many videos we have, but I think it's north of 50.
Wow.
So and then we also have YouTube videos for our displays as well, like being able to pull up a field or being able to load a prescription, that kind of thing. So we recognize that YouTube is a really good resource, and people are used to searching on it and finding what they need. So that's really a great opportunity to use. So
Sure. So for somebody who's, maybe getting started with data management, or maybe wanting to do their data management a little bit better, what's one piece of advice that you might like to offer to those folks that are
Sure.
that are in that position?
Yeah, go in it with a little bit of an open mind. I mean, you can, sky's kind of the limit, and being able to kind of challenge yourself. Okay, if I have this field, and I know that it has these areas that probably need improvement, is it something I can quantify with a number? And that's really kind of the other thing that you kind of get out of a mapping program, is that I know it's always been bad in this area. Now I can put a query around it, or a tooltip, and say, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was, but it's not as good as I want it to be.
Right.
And so start simple. Start with reading and yield data, or making planner maps to be able to do a better job scouting. Is there a pollination difference between these two varieties, that kind of thing. And using the layers to start with, using AgFiniti, going out and scouting in the middle of the season, if you have different varieties out in the field, which one looks like it's going to be, weathering some of that, August weather better than others. So
Great. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you to Aaron for joining us today on the FarmBits podcast. We work with SMS Advanced for our research here at the Digital Ag team at the University of Nebraska, and it was really great to hear some more about some of the software's capabilities that even we were not fully aware of how they worked. And so I guess for me, I really enjoyed the discussion that Aaron gave us about kind of profit and loss, and how that is tied in to organized data, right? So you have to have well-organized multi-year data in order to really look at profit and loss long-term, as well as kind of handle risk management for some of these fields, saying, okay, if I'm in a bad year, this is how much I know I can account for, and I need to make sure that I'm managing that risk appropriately. And so having organized data is important for those types of analyses. And that's exactly what the SMS software gives you. And that's what digital technology has enabled.
Hmm. Yeah, that was really interesting to hear about. And I like the discussion on where ag leaders going in the future. So they have been working to improve their management zone software or their analysis tool. They are working more on the profit loss tools. And so that's so great to see where they're going. I also really appreciate how SMS or Ag Leader as a company has worked to produce YouTube videos and help videos to help the producers. And they want to make their software usable, and that's such a great thing to see from a company.
You love to see that emphasized for sure.
Mhm. So yeah, with that, thank you so much for joining us today on the FarmBits podcast. We hope you learned something alongside us, learning more about Ag Leaders SMS Advanced Software, and we hope to see you again next week.